Steve is great. Meets his deadlines, keeps his plants alive. And Mia, super smart. Andre's amazing. He's never missed an email. But from here, you can see they're part of something bigger. One team, building the world. At Atlassian, we believe real progress takes all of us, working together on new sources of energy. Cars that drive to the future. Even pizza deliveries. Pizza. Together, we can go beyond where we've ever been. Up and away. Collaborating from anywhere on anything and everything. Atlassian makes software for teams to do what is impossible alone. At Atlassian, we believe impossible things are only impossible alone. Space rovers, electric trucks, even something as simple as a pencil was once impossible. Sorry, geniuses, but everything in this world requires collaboration. Teams of all sizes use our software like Jira and Trello to power all kinds of projects. That's how you make the impossible possible. Together. It's not rocket science. Well, sometimes it is. Discover the next era of teamwork with Atlassian Intelligence and take your biggest goals from daunting to done. Starting a new initiative? Let AI brainstorm with you on the right steps. Additional questions? Dig in with Atlassian Intelligence and discuss until you're satisfied. Long pages? Summarize them and quickly go from context to game plan. Let AI update you on the status of all projects at the start of a sprint. Use natural language to run complex queries in seconds. And let AI-powered virtual agents instantly resolve customer issues in chat. All while knowing every interaction is private and secure. Atlassian Intelligence is built to reimagine the future of teamwork, and we're just getting started.
Modern work is complex, and it takes a team of teams. But with different workflows and objectives, teams, tools, and information can easily fall into silos where collaboration is stifled and innovation suffers, especially as you scale. That's why we built the Atlassian platform. As the foundation that powers all Atlassian solutions, it breaks information silos and drives connection between teams, tools, and data across your entire organization. So no matter where your teams are or how they like to work, they're always connected on one seamless platform that powers truly remarkable experiences. With the Atlassian platform, teams can collaborate effectively, get powerful insights from cross-product analytics, streamline work through automation, and let admins manage it all at scale. And the best part, it's not just for Atlassian products. Thousands of the world's most popular apps easily integrate with the Atlassian platform, meaning teams have the freedom to customize their workflows and use the best tool for the job without becoming siloed. all while teams get peace of mind that Atlassian solutions are built on secure, compliant, and reliable cloud infrastructure. Whatever your team's goals are, from engineering and IT to business and service teams, bring them all together to make complex work productive and scale your organization beyond the impossible with the Atlassian platform.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's event. This is Lily Tao, one of the AC leaders in Hong Kong, and I will be your host of the event today. Before we start, as one of our tradition, I'd like to invite you to scan this QR code and fill in the feedback form for today's event. You will have the chance to win a Grab or Starbucks voucher if you submit the form. And we are happy to continue this small tradition for our attendees also in our future online events. Make sure that you tell us whether you want a Grab or a Starbucks tickets. So now I give you 5 seconds to take this QR code and submit the form. So let's begin today's lineup. First, we have Matt from Atlassian to share with you the keynotes of the Unleash in AI Era event. Matt is going to walk you through the point of view from Atlassian, the products and solutions recommended by Atlassian to build a unique dev culture in the AI era for your organization. Then, we have Colin Jarvis from OpenAI, Stacey Law from Atlassian, and John Kindmont from Atlassian to have a fireside talk, sharing with you their own opinions about how devs can build the future and present of teamwork, together with AI joining as half of the tool and half as part of the team. An important question is that would be always asked was, will AI take our jobs? This will also be discussed within this talk. Finally, I would introduce to you our next event before we leave you. Our APAC Atlassian user group hosts a variety of events throughout the year, or aim at keeping you up to date with the latest industry trends, best practice, and innovative solutions. We will provide you with all the necessary information on how you can stay connected and get the latest news for our upcoming events. So thank you all for joining us today. We hope you find today's events informative and valuable. Now sit back, relax, and get ready to dive into this new era of AI and the next generation of teamwork.
Hello, Unleash. I'm Matt, and before we begin, I want to thank you for joining me here today. Think about dev culture as the experience of making software, the practices you adopt, the tools you choose, and how it feels when you bring it all together. So how do you unleash the right dev culture? Let's talk about 3 best practices. First, keep developers and the teams that support them in their flow state as much as possible. AI is an incredible productivity booster for development teams, from getting up to speed to finding the right thing to work on, to providing excellent service during an incident. Atlassian Intelligence was there every step of the way. It's an absolute game changer in how teams work, but it's not the only way we're helping devs stay in the flow. We've shipped another highly requested feature, the command palette in Jira. Sometimes the most valuable work devs can do is clear away those roadblocks to keep everyone's work flowing smoothly. Jira makes this dead simple with guided suggestions, looking across all your connected dev tools to surface the highest priority items. But world-class software doesn't come from engineering teams alone. In an agile world, collaboration between developers and designers is a continuous process, not a single handoff moment. Together with Figma, we have a major update to the Jira integration Developers now see a design updated label if the design has changed in Figma since the last time they viewed that issue. So that takes us to the next best practice for unleashing the right dev culture. You need to reduce the cognitive load on your engineering teams. Make it easy for them to have the information they need to do their jobs. Our developer experience platform, Compass, is officially GA and being used by thousands of engineering teams across the globe. Compass provides teams with a component catalog that shows who owns each component, up and downstream dependencies, all the associated documentation, activity history, and so much more. Developer experience is constantly evolving, so having the right tools in place to measure and benchmark your own developer experience is key. We've partnered with global developer experience organization DX to bring DevX surveys into Compass. These surveys are built on industry-leading research and crafted by the same teams behind Dora and Spacemetrics. Let's wrap things up with best practice number 3. To unleash the right dev culture, you have to capture the right metrics. And we have 2 new data sources for Atlassian Analytics that provide you with critical insights into productivity and efficiency across your entire business. First, you can use Atlassian Analytics to visualize data from third-party DevOps tools connected to Jira. And second, you can visualize data from Jira Align Enterprise Insights in Atlassian Analytics. With Atlassian Analytics and Jira Align, you get the flow metrics for your end-to-end value streams across all the teams, systems, and processes. When we started investing in developer experience, only 49% of our devs were satisfied with our engineering culture. Now, that number is more like 70%. And we've improved deployment frequency by 300%. To recap, I shared 3 best practices to unleash the right dev culture. First, help your developers stay in their flow state. Second, reduce the cognitive load on your engineering teams. Third, capture the right metrics to promote a healthy culture. When tools and practices work in harmony, teams work better, faster, and more effectively.
Welcome, Colin, Stacy. So good to have you here.
Great to be here.
I'd love to start with a get to know you question before we kind of dive into the deep dive behind the models. So Stacy, you've got a really interesting background from video game development to mixed reality. I'd love to hear the coolest thing you've ever worked on.
Yeah, so hey everyone. I used to work at Xbox at Microsoft, and when I worked there, I thought, oh, cool, like I get to work on a video game console and they pay me for it. How cool is that? So that was the coolest job ever. But then when I worked on HoloLens, which is Microsoft's mixed reality device, I thought, wow, now I'm working on sci-fi. How cool is that? So it just keeps getting cooler. And then now that I'm at Atlassian working on AI, like I could literally say that this is the coolest job I've ever had. And the reason is because building AI is like building magic for me. And the best thing is that not only is this cutting edge technology, but it's just so accessible for developers and for users. You don't need an expensive device to use it. You don't need to learn a new interaction model, right? So, building AI is like building magic. It's like building pixie dust. So I just love it. This is the coolest job.
Wow, video games and magic. I'm pretty sure you just described my kids' dream jobs and probably half the people in this audience as well. So that's amazing. Colin, you've been at OpenAI for more than a year now. I'm sure it's been very boring, nothing exciting happening. And you have decades more experience in the data and AI space. While you've been working with algorithms for a long time, I want you to reach way back in your memory banks and tell me about your first exposure to AI.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to. Yeah, great to meet everybody. Yeah, so Colin, OpenAI. My entry into AI was kind of like somewhat non-traditional. I actually studied languages at university, didn't write a line of code until I started my first job as a consultant. And I think I sort of like trended towards AI because like I like solving problems, and I kept becoming like kind of frustrated with the limitations of like the technology as I learned it. So learned Python, learned SQL, became a data engineer, then became a product person, and then ended up working for a consultancy startup where we specialized in AI for kind of large banks. And back then it was all kind of, random forests and kind of more traditional machine learning, but still it was like fairly inaccessible and fairly difficult to adopt. And I guess I kind of got a bit frustrated with that side of things, moved into a social care startup. And that was really where I started to get like excited about the potential for AI, because I guess our technology was being used by like 60,000 care workers out in the UK. And like we could just see the frustration of like, there was all this technology available, but still most of the stuff didn't really work that well. It was like, text to voice, all this kind of stuff was like there, but none of the care workers used it. It was all still very manual. And I was like pretty frustrated that like, despite all this advancement, hadn't really gone super far. And that's where one of my friends was working at OpenAI and showed me GPT-3. And I was like, well, this like looks pretty cool. And at that stage, I was like pretty interested in OpenAI. And then the other side of it is that like I'm a little bit of like a frustrated creative in that like I love art and I love like the idea of being good at art, but I'm terrible at like drawing and anything that's like even slightly related to art. So when I saw DALL-E come out, I was like, this is like super cool. Like a person with like no artistic talent at all like myself could like actually start to create like beautiful things. And that was like what really sold me on OpenAI. And then joined OpenAI in November last year, and then within a couple weeks we released a low-key research preview, and since then it's been a wild ride. So that's kind of how I got here.
Wow, that's amazing timing with when you joined. So thank you for that background. Now, one of the main differences that we're seeing with modern AI compared to even a decade ago is the way it's becoming much more integrated in individual and team ways of working versus machine learning models that lived only with a data science team or in a consulting or marketing slide deck or something like that. One of the differences is people now are actually able to take it out and play with it. With this in mind, I'd love to hear what you're seeing day to day across businesses and engineering teams that you work with. What are the real world impacts that businesses expect from the latest wave of generative AI? Colin.
Sure. Yeah, no, happy to share I'll maybe share 3 stories about how I've seen folks using it today. And a lot of it is like kind of trying to separate like the hype, which is like way up here with like, the current capabilities of the models, which is probably like, maybe somewhere around here. So you can still get like great results, but I think the best deployments that I've seen of Gen AI so far have been still like more human like augmentation. So like supporting like expert humans doing what they're good at rather than actually fully automating kind of processes. So the first example I'll go with is a financial services customer in Europe, and they decided to create a customer service co-pilot who would basically work side by side with their customer service agents. And their customer service agents acted in like a swivel desk sort of capacity, so they would maybe have 5 or 6 open chats at any point in time, and they used Gen AI to create like a next best action sort of agent. So when you're switching between 2 or 3 chats, whenever you come back, it's kind of saying, hey, welcome back, this is where we're at, we've collected these details, this is the next step. And what we found is that 2 things happened. So first of all, the employee satisfaction went like way up because they weren't dealing with as many annoyed customers who were like, I've already given you this information, I gave this information to the bot, why am I having to give it again? It kind of like led them through that process. And the second thing was that the customers were happier because by the time they actually spoke to a human, that person already had all the details which the AI had collected through like a chat interface. And it was an extremely quick process to in this case, get to dispute resolution. What they got was, first of all, their operational costs dropped 24%, and that was without laying people off. It was actually just like the throughput of people they were getting through was vastly increased. And I think in one region, they actually ended up with no queue for first level support for like about a week because just the rate that they were getting through was so much greater. And in the end, it was actually like a fairly unsexy sort of deployment. It was just a little window on the side of the customer service agent screen where there was just constant kind of helpful advice just being fed to them about how the process was going and what the next thing they could do is. That's number 1. So story number 2 is wealth management, so investment bankers in America, and they basically wanted to provide information a lot more quickly. So they found, like probably like everybody else here, that like people have written documents all over the place, and it's just really hard to find what's useful. And we built for them just a simple like chat interface where they could just talk to their research documents. It was about 100,000 different documents. And the first thing I will say is this was like not straightforward for anybody in the audience who's like tried to actually implement generative AI. Like the hype makes it look like you just give the bot the information and it all comes back to you. But this was like a 6-month process of getting to a level of accuracy that we were comfortable with going to production to give help people give investment advice. But what we found is it increased the use of their knowledge base 3x. And this was for users who were all in like their between 40s and 50s, like kind of not your traditional kind of AI users. And they loved just like the simplicity. And the UX that we built actually allowed them to just like keep diving into the knowledge base afterwards. So the chat interface was just the entry point. But really like it just kind of shows, again, this is just like augmenting what those people could do already, just giving them like easier access to the information they had and a more consumable interface. That's number 2. And number 3 is more of like a cautionary tale, where a large consultancy that did a study, BCG, they teamed up with Harvard Business School, and they basically gave a bunch of consultants access to GPT-4, and then gave a set of consultants, like didn't give them GPT-4, and then basically monitored them over their tasks over a series of months. And the findings were really interesting and kind of like underlines this like human augmentation focus, is that they found that actually the best performers performed quite a bit better. They were just faster because they had a process of like validating the information that they got from GPT-4. But actually the lower performers, they actually performed worse, but much more quickly. So they created garbage faster, basically. And what like the thing that underlines is like the kind of key principle with Gen AI. It isn't like a magic thing that just solves everything. It will give you things faster. But it is best when it acts as like an assistant, almost like an intern, where you know that you need to review their work, but you can send them away and they will come back within like a couple of seconds with something that's like fairly serviceable. But you need to have the confidence still to like validate that and have a process of making that usable. And those are really, I guess, 3 examples of how I've seen it. So it can deliver huge impact, but where it's delivered like transformational impact has been where it's embedded in like an existing competent, like very strong team of people to drive it.
I love that. I love the concept of AI sitting as a nexus between humans and the data they need to make decisions and connect with one another. So that's a great call out. Stacey, I'd love to hear from you. What are some of the business use cases and real world impacts you're seeing?
Yeah, thanks, John. So there's so much excitement about AI going on right now. And the things that we're hearing from our customers is that they're not trying to like replace their users or their workers with AI. What they're really trying to do is they're trying to upskill their workforce, right? And so what I mean by that, is they want their workers to be faster, they want them to be smarter, and they want them to be better team collaborators, right? So if you think about all the money that employers spend upskilling their workforce, making process improvements, right? And then training their employees, it's actually a lot of money, right? And then when the projects change, when employees leave the company, all those process improvements that you've made, all that tribal knowledge that you had with those employees, that's all gone, right? So the great thing about AI is what it does is it helps you retain that information and allows your users to access it on demand whenever they need it, right? So really what I think is that AI is going to really change the landscape of where we're spending our time, right? So, instead of spending our time learning the same lessons over and over again, like what AI is going to do is it's going to allow us to focus on the things that are most interesting and unique, like those types of problems. So I think that's really cool.
I love that. I love that, the leveling up of the way we approach problems. I'd love to hear, Stacey, from you. We have the real world impact from business use cases. I'd love to hear, what you're personally most interested in terms of Gen AI currently.
Yeah. So the first thing I think is, don't underestimate the most simple things that you could do with AI. So for instance, something like a simple summary, right? Like you think, oh, that's so straightforward, everyone could do it. But the thing is, imagine, like if I could, so for instance, I work on Confluence, and so we have page summaries on Confluence, right? And so that summary that is provided on that page saves me so much time every day. So if you think about like for one user, if that's saving you like hours of work a day, and then you multiply that by all the employees you have, that's a huge impact on your company, right? So that's the first thing, simple use cases. The second thing is similar to what Colin said previously, which is, our customers are telling us that, their content and their information is kind of scattered across multiple tools, right? And so how do you access that? Well, AI is really great at parsing a lot of information and giving you the right data, right? And so that's another great use case, right? Like using AI to parse the data that you have and all your different tools and then bring it to where you are, right? And then I think the third use case that I think is really cool is how AI could help you really transform and translate your work to improve team collaboration, right? And when I say translate, I don't really just mean, global language translations, even though, AI could do that for you too. But what I really mean is, translating content between people of different disciplines maybe, or of different expertise. And so imagine, an engineer is creating a very technical document that maybe a non-technical person, maybe your marketing group doesn't understand very well, but AI could do that translation for you, remove all that technical jargon, and then you have a document that everyone can understand. So if you take that to the extreme, what you can imagine is, if you're like doing brainstorming and whiteboard in Confluence, right, and you have all these like random ideas by the team who's actually working on this project, right? You've got this scattered, unstructured list of ideas, right? AI can help you turn that into a product requirements doc in Confluence, right? And then once that document is done, it could then translate that document into a Jira project with all your stories and acceptance criteria. And then when all that's done, right, like AI could then take, that whole journey that you've done through all these different tools and turn that into a presentation that can be understood by, the masses at a conference like this, and you can present it to thousands of people. So I really think that AI is a really great tool to help the team collaborate better in that sense.
I love that. Colin, I'd love to hear, what you're personally most excited about and how that translates to the business use cases we just previously discussed.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and probably adding on to some of what Stacy said there in terms of like increasing the kind of accessibility using Gen AI. So there's kind of two themes I'll share that I'm really excited about. So like if like the hype's up here and like what I just talked about in terms of stuff people have actually accomplished is like maybe down here, then like the next couple of use cases I'm really excited will bring things up to like this level maybe. And that's kind of on two fronts. So first of all is like multimodal ways of interacting with models will increase like the breadth of user experiences that you can build, which is really cool. And I'll share a couple examples of those. And then the other is like taking this idea of having a personal assistant and then using that for like quite creative use cases where it's not just a personal assistant who's like a gopher just going and fetching information, but they start to actually interact with you in like a more sort of human way to give you like a kind of a thought partner or something like that. So the first one, the multimodal. So previously, like when somebody gave you audio and you need to convert that to text, that used to be a barrier which was an engineering challenge. We were like, right, this is going to be a hard thing to do. Nowadays, it still is hard, but the barrier for entry is being lowered. Like there's a lot of Gen AI models that do like a serviceable approach at this. Like Whisper can do your speech to text. You've got TTS to do your speech to like text back to speech. And things like GPT-4 can take in images as output, where previously you would have needed some kind of like OCR library or something to actually understand this image and turn it into data. So one of the really cool ways that one of our customers has like built an application with this is a company called Be My Eyes, and they built an app for visually impaired people. And basically the way it works is you point your camera at something and take a picture, and then the GPT-4 will interpret that image, describe what you're looking at, and then a conversation starts. And again, as a blind person, then like having to type into a phone is again a friction in your user experience. And now you just talk and it will talk back to you. So you have a fully multimodal experience. You're basically taking images and then you're having a conversation and the AI is trying to help you. And like we've seen it used for things like getting dressed in the morning or going to an event, like just getting it to give you some feedback on like, what do you think, like this or this, which is like kind of cool when you think that the previous experience was to call a person on the phone and like show them you wearing those things. It's a much more kind of like exposing experience, whereas like a multimodal Gen AI powered experience is actually pretty like feels sort of private, but also like kind of nice, and it extends to also some like fairly important use cases like, taking a picture of your fridge and being like, is my milk expired and things like this. So there's some like really cool use cases there which are unlocked by just having these models, and like the effort in standing up an experience like that is far lower than it used to be. Another kind of cool one is one that Spotify did for voice translation. So their idea was that they wanted podcasters to be able to like scale their voices to more audiences. So like somebody like Lex Fridman, the person who listens in Spanish would not hear like someone else reading what Lex Fridman said, but they would actually hear Lex Fridman using it. And what we built for them was like a sort of Gen AI pipeline that would basically transcribe the initial podcast, translate it, and then generate a new audio using the voice of the podcaster. And this is like highly experimental. So this is why I'm saying we're still far behind the hype cycle here. But the results were actually pretty cool. Like I would say in certain languages, the performance is actually pretty good in terms of like, I think Spanish, French, and German was what it was tested on. And that's another cool example of like a couple, I mean, that used like speech to text, and then text to text, but language to language basically, and then generating a new thing. And right now there's tons of human effort in there as well in terms of validating the outputs, making sure that they're of a sufficient quality to actually use for a podcast. But equally, it kind of gives you a bit of a vision of like the experiences that will be possible once these models are more mature, once you're able to fine tune them exactly the quality you need. So those are a couple like increasing the accessibility multimodal use cases that I'm excited about. Moving on to like the personal assistant side. So there's a couple like really cool creative ways that people have found of like making the AI work with them that like I want to share just in case it stimulates, because I know there's a lot of like product managers and stuff out there who are going to be like doing more of a creative than like a simple information retrieval kind of use case. Or I say simple, it's really hard, but you know what I mean. For personal assistants, there's a company called Khan Academy, and they made a offering called Khanmigo. And it's really cool. You basically tell the AI what you want to learn, and then it will help you learn the concept without giving you the answers, sort of. And it's like sort of frustrating to use, because you'll be like, at some stage, get really frustrated and be like, just give me the answer. But it will keep giving you kind of leading questions and help you learn a concept. And it's actually really fun, because when you use it for things like language, for example, it's super cool that like this is like again a non-judgmental sort of AI who's like, even if you make dumb mistakes and stuff, you don't feel like it's judging you, and you can kind of like work your way towards learning the concept. And it's a really more private experience maybe, but like one that I found like super cool. And like one last example that's sort of similar to that, but is like a commercial use case that an e-commerce company that we're working with did, was they created a marketing brief generator. And they had a stateful application that had the stages of creating a marketing brief, which is like you have a vision, and then you have like, your targeted messages, and then you do so what they did was they built like a Gen AI enabled flow where it would like ask them leading or challenging questions through each side of the process. And then once they were happy, they could be like, all right, we're happy with the vision, save that. And then it would like help walk them through. And then at any stage, they could stop and get it to generate material based on the campaign and see what it looked like, and then tear it up and do it again. And again, this is obviously just like giving almost a sounding board for like the marketing team to work through this process. But a process that previously just creating that content would take like a week now took like a couple of hours, and you could rip up and work through like tons of ideas. So the upshot of that is like using AIs as personal assistants can really like accelerate the creative process, and just make sure that like once you have an idea, you can actually physically test that idea in the real world much faster. So those are a couple of things that I'm really excited about. Is like the multimodal experiences, increasing the breadth of people that can interact with these experiences much more easily, and personal assistants just meaning that you can have much more tailored ways that these AIs can help you as they continue to improve.
I love that. The accessibility use case is super interesting, for millions and millions of people. And I'm glad with the Khan Academy learning virtual assistant, they're not judgmental. I hate it when AIs are always judging me when I'm asking them questions. So that's a good thing. Colin, OpenAI has obviously had a few minor press releases or press moments lately that has gotten a lot of attention. Beyond that, you also had your first ever Open AI Dev Day that might have slipped under the radar with all the recent excitement. So I'd love to go back and look at that Open AI Dev Day in November, and what are the announcements and releases that have gotten the community most excited, and what are you most excited about that came out of that great event?
Totally, yeah. I'm excited to hear that the question is about Dev Day when it's about the last couple of weeks. I guess if I sum up the releases from Dev Day, there's probably like 3 buckets that we released content for. So number one, and it's something I've talked about a lot so far, is the idea of like assistants. And this is not a new idea. Like open source community built like Baby AGI and AutoGPT like months ago. So people have thought of this idea of like getting the AI to go away and do things on your behalf for a while. But what's happened is that in Dev Day, we released 2 things which make it much easier to build assistants, so that people who like maybe don't even know how to program are able to build assistants to do kind of things to support them in their day-to-day. So the two main releases there were GPTs within ChatGPT and the Assistants API on the API. And both of those have a similar goal in mind, which is like again, just lowering the barrier for entry to build in like an AI assistant to do something to help you. So GPTs, I would say like pretty much anybody who's a confident ChatGPT user will find them a pretty like decent next step, where you can give the GPT like a kind of a policy of how to act. You might just want it as like a sounding board, kind of like Conmigo, like I spoke to before, or you may want to give it access to an API, like give it access to like Confluence or Jira, and actually have it able to like pull information from somewhere else to answer your questions, so kind of a ChatGPT but with your own data sources kind of use case. And we're pretty excited to see like what people are going to start building there. But that was like one of the big ones. The other one is the Assistants API, and Assistant API is great if you want that like ChatGPT type experience, but you want it within your own surface. So like you have an existing app or something that you want to just maybe make Code Interpreter available for, or like you have a bunch of data but you want to do data analysis on it, so you want to lean on our kind of pre-built and validated Code Interpreter tool. So they're both just kind of simpler ways to roll out production versions of assistants. Again, like the Assistant API is just taking its first steps. It will not be perfect for all use cases, but we're really excited to see where it goes, and we're equally excited to hear people's feedback when they try it out. So that is like kind of on the assistants front. The next thing that we did was try and increase like the number of experiences that you could build by offering a bunch of new modalities. So we've talked about a bunch of them already. So GPT-4 Turbo came out, so not a cheaper version of GPT-4, which also has a vision element. So you can put in a whole bunch of images and ask them to be interpreted by GPT-4. And we've already found some pretty cool use cases. There was a guy who hooked it up to his security camera, and then because the long context of GPT-4 vision, he would like put a bunch of frames of his security camera in every minute, and then ask it to tell him if like anybody was in his yard or whatever it is, and which is sort of cool. And it was like previously you think the amount of effort you would need to go to build that application. Now you just like spend $200 on GPT-4 Vision every day. But so it's maybe not a scalable solution. But again, just a cool idea of like the sorts of things that you can do with this. And that's kind of on the modality side. We also released text to speech, and we released a better version of Whisper. So those now speech to speech experiences should become much simpler to build. So if I summarize what I've said so far, so assistants make it easier to build AIs that go do things on your behalf. Multimodal, now you can get those assistants to do more things. And the last thing is fine-tuning that we've really like doubled down on. So fine-tuning, some of you might have used the fine-tuning endpoint so far for GPT 3.5. So we now have a longer context fine-tune for 16K GPT 3.5. And we're also looking at releasing a version of GPT-4 fine-tuning. So if the previous two options were about letting the AIs do more, the fine-tuning is all about, now that you've got them doing something, can we make it reliable enough to work in production, and giving you like more levers to do that. So I think those are like, if I had to summarize the Dev Day announcements, those would be the main ones, along with the general comment that we've tried to make all of our models more accessible by making them cheaper, and just trying to bring prices down wherever we could. So those are probably the main takeaways that I had from Dev Day. Yeah.
So switching gears just a little bit, it's December, and many in the audience are thinking about their initiatives for the next year. Whether they're using AI as part of their workflows already, or they're thinking about building AI applications, what are some of the critical things that you think teams should be focusing on in 2024? Like what should this audience take and start applying in January? Colin.
Sure. Yeah, that's a broad question, but I think I mean, we've talked through a lot of new experiences which are possible now. So like it should be easier to get assistants to production. We've got things like the Assistants API to help us. We've got lots of new modalities to use. So we have a wider breadth of user experiences, and we've also got fine-tuning to help us go deeper and hopefully get these more difficult user experiences to production. So the thing that I would suggest is start by actually choosing like at least one big, either 0 to 1 use case or 1 to n use case. And when I say that, I mean 0 to 1 is like, what's a new thing we never could have done without Gen AI? An example is like Spotify decided we're going to try voice translation. That's something we could never do before, but we're going to like go big and try and do that. That's one. And a one-to-end thing is more like, what's a transformative thing that we probably could have done before, but it would have been really hard, and let's just like double down on this and make it happen. And that would be more of an example of that investment banking firm that I used before, where like they made their information retrieval really good, and around that they also made a framework where every customer incoming email was transcribed, summarized for the handler, and then their reply emails were like generated. They were generated like 3 to 5 options for them to come back with. And this was like, they took a central process of their business and decided to totally rewire it for Gen AI. So those are kind of the two approaches that I've seen people like score biggest with Gen AI. And then the next step, once you've like landed on one of these use cases, is just to start. So I think just to like test that use case at the smallest scale, use ChatGPT, use the Assistants API through the playground, use whatever other provider, Anthropic, Google, whatever, and just like get started and test that use case at a micro level. And if it looks like it works, then stand something up and go for it.
That's really useful. Stacy, I'd love to hear what you think the audience should focus on in 2024.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the first thing would be, if you're a developer and if you haven't used AI yet, like just go do it. Like just get your hands dirty, get in there, use these, assistant APIs that Colin has been talking about, or whatever you have, and just try it out. Because a lot of times, the smallest thing, as we talked about before, can make such a huge impact, right? So just try it out. And there's actually a lot you can learn about how do you do prompt engineering and all that kind of stuff where, it's really hard to learn unless you are actually doing it. So that's my number one recommendation, which is just do it. The second thing I would say is, we're generating so much content now with all this generative AI, right? So I think the thing not to forget about is, your search and relevance, right? So like with all this data, how do you like sift through the noise and get to the signal? So I think that's also a really important thing to think about. And the third thing I think I would recommend is, just push the boundaries of the assumptions that, we're just used to making every day, right? Like I think that AI adds this whole new level of understanding and sort of possibilities into things that we never would have thought was possible before. So for an example, imagine for mobile phones, we traditionally think of those phones as being consumption devices, right? Oh, the screen is so small, input is so hard, right? But is that still true with AI? I mean, can AI help us do deep creation on mobile phones, right? So that's just one example. But I think that AI could really help us really push those boundaries for those assumptions that we've had for so long until now. Yeah.
I love that. Well, unfortunately, we're running towards the end of our session here. And I just want to thank you both for your time and your insights. Colin and Stacy, I really appreciate you sharing your lived experience as we explore the next wave of AI, and I can't wait to see what comes next. In reflection, what really stood out to me is just the ways in which you can really see the areas where you can make these micro improvements to improve your individual or team workflows, or you could be working on this next big thing. And I think that's just such a fascinating space for us. And I think that, I can't wait to see what this group builds, in terms of ways we can, connect better with each other, relate to one another, and really just dive deeper into the data we have access to. So I really hope this was a useful session. Enjoy the rest of your time at Unleash, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining the event. And now this is the last chance for you to win a Grab or a Starbucks ticket. So please scan the QR code below and fill in a very short form to submit for the feedback of our current events. We value your feedback and will try to improve based on your feedback in the future. Once you submit the form, you will be automatically included in our draw for winning the Grab or Starbucks tickets. About our next events, on January the 1st, a Thursday of next year, 2024, we will have the next monthly online webinar with you, Please join our social media group to get the latest updates for all our events, including the one on January 18th. The Facebook group can be attended using the QR code on this page. Thank you very much for joining us today. We hope to see you again next month. Thank you.